It's a Tuesday, 415 AD. A woman is moving through the streets of Alexandria. Inside her carriage, the sun is setting. Through the curtain, she can smell salt air from the Mediterranean and smoke from somewhere she can't quite place. She's made this journey 1,000 times. Past the marble columns, past the merchants closing their stalls, past the students still debating philosophy on the steps of the Great Hall. But tonight, something feels different. The streets are too quiet, the students are gone. And somewhere outside, she can hear footsteps, more than one person, moving fast, keeping pace. She is the most brilliant mathematician alive. She has spent her entire life inside these walls, unlocking secrets that most people won't rediscover for another 1,000 years. And she has approximately 4 minutes left to live. Her name was Hypatia of Alexandria, mathematician, astronomer, philosopher. She taught in public squares because she believed knowledge belonged to everyone, not just the powerful. Students traveled from across the known world just to hear her think out loud. In the library she dedicated her life to, 500,000 scrolls. Think about that number for a moment. 500,000. Cures for diseases that would kill millions for another 1,000 years. Maps of a world most people believed was flat. Calculations so precise they still hold up today. And questions, dangerous, burning questions, that powerful men had decided humanity was better off never asking. Gone. But here's what most people don't know. By 415 AD, the library wasn't the thriving center of knowledge it once was. It had been shrinking for decades, starved of funding, caught in the crossfire of political and religious power struggles that had nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with control. Hypatia knew this. She watched it happen in slow motion her entire life. So when that mob followed her through the streets of Alexandria on that March evening, but they weren't just killing a woman. They were making a choice on behalf of all of humanity. They were choosing a world with less light in it. What if the last great light of the ancient world never went out? To answer that, you have to understand what she saw every time she walked through those doors. Hypatia was not born in that library, but it almost felt that way. As a small girl, she had walked through those columns holding her father's hand. Every day since then, she had walked those same corridors, the same shelves, the same scrolls, the same smell, leather, ink, old dust, and something else. She had understood later what that something was, the smell of possibility, because what lived on those shelves was not only the past. Eratosthenes was there, his calculations, the work of a man who had measured the circumference of the earth with a single stick in his own mind. 240 BC. No instruments, no technology, only thought. And the calculation was still correct today. Hero was there, his diagrams, the drawings of a small bronze device that converted steam into movement. 1st century AD. It worked. It actually worked. It had been used as a toy. Hypatia had first seen those diagrams at 16. She looked at them for a long time. Then she looked at the shelves, then back at the diagram. That day, she understood something she never forgot. If the knowledge inside this building had reached the right hands, the right minds, the right moment, where would humanity be now? She didn't know the answer, but the question never left her. And now, approaching 50, she had begun to understand that she would never know the answer, because the building was dying, slowly, quietly, but dying. Cyril had not sent an army, had not used weapons. He was far too clever for that. He had simply cut the funding. When Hypatia first noticed, in one of those years she couldn't say exactly when, she felt the library shrinking. Not physically, but every week another scholar was gone. Every month another shelf stood empty. The debates grew quieter, the corridors fell silent, and Cyril watched. Burning a great library creates martyrs, someone had once said, but emptying it slowly, no one notices. Hypatia noticed. And every morning as she walked those corridors, past those columns, ran her fingers along those shelves, one thought was in her mind. Is this as far as it goes? All of this, Eratosthenes and his stick, Hero and his diagrams, centuries of accumulated questions and answers and possibilities, all of it lost in this silence? She still didn't have an answer when she climbed into her carriage that evening, but the question had never felt more urgent, because the footsteps behind her were telling her something. Time is running out. The carriage was already moving, and Hypatia sat with her hands folded in her lap. Outside, the city was quieter than it should have been. She had noticed it before she even climbed in. The merchants who usually argued until dark had packed up early. The students who always gathered on the Great Hall steps were gone. A dog that lived near the corner of the market had not barked. Small things? She had spent her life noticing small things. The driver took the usual turn, left at the agora, right at the old temple, straight home along the main road. And then Hypatia heard it. Not a sound exactly, more like the absence of one. The city holding its breath. She had felt this before, once as a child, when her father had grabbed her arm without warning and pulled her sideways off a street. A moment later, a cartwheel had come loose and crashed exactly where she had been standing. He hadn't explained. There had been no time to explain. She understood now what he had known then. "Stop," she said. The driver looked back. "Take the harbor road." He hesitated. It was longer, unfamiliar at this hour. His expression said what his mouth didn't. Why? She didn't answer. She couldn't have explained it if she tried. "Take the harbor road." He did. Inside the carriage, Hypatia did not move. She sat with her hands still folded in her lap, listening. The horse's hooves changed rhythm on the harbor cobblestones. Softer, slower. The water was somewhere to her left. She could smell it. She did not look back at it. She would never know exactly what happened on the street they had left. She would hear things later. Rumors, fragments, a name she recognized. She would understand enough. But in that moment, in the dark of the carriage, she only knew one thing. Something had been waiting for her, and it had missed. 3 streets away, a man held a torch higher and looked down an empty road. Nothing. They waited. Then one by one, they disappeared back into the dark. And Hypatia of Alexandria arrived home, shaken, breathing harder than usual, unsure exactly what she had just escaped. And now, the world that follows is not the world you know. Hypatia's hands were trembling when she got home. She told no one. She closed the door, lit the lamp, sat at her desk. Outside, the city was sleeping. Inside, there was only her and everything she had spent years collecting. Shelves full of scrolls, half-finished calculations, unanswered questions. For a long time, she did nothing. Then she picked up her pen. She wrote 2 letters that night. The first went to Orestes, the Roman prefect of Alexandria, and the closest thing she had to a powerful friend. She did not tell him what had happened. She only asked for something she had never asked for before: his protection. Orestes gave it. Cyril did not disappear. He did not stop. But there were things even he could not do openly against a woman under the prefect's protection. The city was watching. Rome was watching. So he waited, and Hypatia understood that waiting was all the time she had. The second letter went to an old student in Constantinople about geometry, about an unsolved problem, as if nothing had happened that evening. But at the end of the letter, she added a small note. "No one else knows these calculations but you. Now you do. Teach someone else." She had never written that note before. The next day, she wrote another letter, to Athens, to Carthage, to Rome. Every letter ended the same way: teach someone else. She never explained why. There was no need. What she had felt in that carriage, the emptiness of the street, the speed of the footsteps, the fear in her driver's eyes, it had told her one thing. You cannot trust a building. You cannot trust a city. You cannot trust a ruler. You can trust people, only people. Years passed. Hypatia died at 83, tired, satisfied, surrounded by students. But before that, Rome fell. 476 AD. The Western Roman Empire collapsed. Barbarian kingdoms rose. Cities burned, roads crumbled, libraries closed. In our world, the knowledge went with them. In this world, it had somewhere else to live. One of those nights, we don't know exactly when, we don't know her name, a woman sat in the cellar of a monastery with her 2 children beside her, drawing letters onto papyrus by candlelight. Outside there was war. Inside there was only that sound, a pen moving across skin. "Memorize this," she told the older child, "whatever happens." The child memorized it, and the child's child memorized it, and their child after that. Approximately 60 years after the fall of Rome, a young engineer in the city of Antioch found an old scroll, Hero's diagrams. But this man looked at them differently, because behind him stood 2 centuries of accumulated mathematical knowledge that in our world had already been lost by this point. He didn't sleep for 3 days, and on the 4th day he built something small, crude, barely functional, but it moved. That night he wrote one line in his journal: "The steam does the work, we only need to learn how to listen to it." Another 100 years passed, then 200 more. Progress was not clean, There were wars, plagues came, power struggles never ended because human nature does not update alongside technology. But one thing existed in this world that did not exist in ours: the candle never went out. By 800 AD, in what our world calls the Dark Ages, this world had printing presses, early steam-powered mills, a medical understanding of infection that would not exist in our world for another 900 years. By 1000 AD, they were mapping the full curvature of the Earth with breathtaking precision. By 1200 AD, they were asking questions about the nature of light, and by the time our world reached the 21st century, they had already been there. For 600 years, all of it, resting on 4 words spoken in the dark. Take the Harbor Road. It's a Tuesday morning in Alexandria, 800 AD. A girl, 9 years old, is late for school. She cuts through the market. Merchants arguing in 4 languages, the smell of frying oil, a steam-powered cart rolling past on the cobblestones, the driver half asleep on his seat, not even holding the reins. She barely glances at it. Just Tuesday. She slides into her seat, opens her satchel, pulls out her textbook, worn at the edges, used by students before her, and finds the chapter she didn't read last night. Infection, microorganisms, how they spread, how to stop them, diagrams she has to memorize. She sighs. Outside the window, her father is at home, quiet, like he has been since the mill changed everything.
Just Tuesday. Another Tuesday. Our world. Not 800 AD. 1942.
A hospital in London, a child, same age, whose temperature has not dropped in 3 days. A doctor standing at the bedside who has done everything he knows, which is not enough. The year is 1942. Humans have already built railways, electricity, aircraft. We have split the atom, and we still don't have a reliable way to stop a bacterial infection. Penicillin exists, just barely, discovered 13 years earlier, still so rare it's being extracted from the urine of patients who received it to be used again. Think about that. That knowledge was in a school book, 800 AD, used by students before her, worn at the edges. Just Tuesday, same hands, same minds. 1100 years apart, one evening in Alexandria, a carriage took a different road, and in our world, it didn't. But in another world, she was still writing letters. Hypatia of Alexandria lived to be 83 years old. In this world, she spent the last decade of her life not in marble halls, but in a small room overlooking the harbor, writing by candlelight before the sun came up, letters to scholars she'd never meet in cities she'd never visit. Sending ideas outward like seeds thrown into wind, not knowing and never knowing where they landed. She taught until her hands made it difficult. Then she taught anyway. On the last morning of her life, she woke before sunrise. She sat at her desk, pulled a sheet of papyrus toward her. Outside the window, the harbor was just beginning to catch the light. A fishing boat moving slowly across the water, smoke rising from the city waking up, the candle on her desk still burning. Just Alexandria, just Tuesday. She picked up her pen and began writing a letter to a student in Constantinople about a problem in geometry she hadn't been able to stop thinking about. She was happy, not in a grand way, in the quiet way that comes from spending a life doing exactly what you were made to do. She didn't finish the letter, her student did, and his student after him, and his. 1100 years later, a girl late for school on a Tuesday morning sighs at diagrams she has to memorize. Neither of them knew. That's the thing about harbor roads. You never know where they go, but someone has to take them. Next week, another person, another crossroads, someone you've never heard of, who came even closer.